there, friends! Welcome back to another episode. Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful and, honestly, one of the most challenging teachings of Jesus. We're talking about Matthew 25 to 35, 40, where Jesus lays down what might just be the ultimate litmus test for genuine faith, how we treat the least of these. So, quick recap. In this passage, Jesus describes a future moment when he returns as king and separates people into two groups, like a shepherd dividing sheep from goats. The sheep are praised for feeding the hungry, welcoming strangers, clothing the naked, and visiting the sick and imprisoned. The goats? Well, they're condemned for failing to do those things. Simple enough, right? Except, here's the twist. Jesus says, "Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me." Let's pause here for a second. Imagine you're walking down the street and you see someone holding a sign asking for food. What if you knew, like 100% for sure, that this person was Jesus in disguise? Wouldn't you drop everything to help? Wouldn't you buy them the biggest meal or invite them over, no questions asked? But what Jesus is saying here is that this isn't a hypothetical, it's real. When we serve someone in need, we're serving him. That's wild, right? But let's be honest, it's not always that simple. Here's the counterpoint. What about people who take advantage of kindness? What if you give money to someone on the street and they use it for something harmful? Or what if you don't feel safe inviting a stranger into your home? These are real concerns, and they can make it hard to know how to live out this command in the real world. But here's what I think. The heart of this passage isn't about solving every societal issue or being reckless with your safety. It's about cultivating a posture of compassion and generosity. It's about seeing the humanity and divinity in every person you meet. What if we all started looking at the world through that lens? How would it change our priorities, our relationships, our communities? I think it could change everything. Okay, so Jesus gives us this list of 6 specific actions that the sheep perform. They feed the hungry, give water to the thirsty, welcome strangers, clothe the naked, care for the sick, and visit the imprisoned. These aren't random acts of kindness, they're intentional responses to the most basic human needs. Let me tell you a quick story. A couple of years ago, I volunteered at a soup kitchen. One afternoon, I met this man named David who was homeless. He told me that the meal we served him wasn't just food, it was dignity. It was a reminder that he wasn't invisible, that someone cared. And that really stuck with me. I mean, something as simple as a meal can be life-changing. It's not about the food, it's about the humanity behind it. Now here's something to think about. These actions, feeding the hungry, visiting prisoners, etc., are all small, doable things. They don't require a theology degree or a huge bank account. But here's the challenge. They times require sacrifice. Giving your time, your money, your energy, it costs you something, and that's what makes it real. So, what's the takeaway here? Maybe the question isn't, how much can I give, but how can I make love a habit? Because that's what stands out in this story. The sheep aren't even aware they're doing anything special. They've made compassion such an integral part of their lives that it's second nature. What if we could live like that? What if kindness wasn't something we scheduled, but something we times were asterisk? So, who exactly are the least of these that Jesus is talking about? Well, there's some debate on this. Some say it refers to all people in need, anyone who's hungry, homeless, sick, or marginalized. Others argue that it specifically means Jesus' followers who are suffering, like persecuted Christians. But honestly, does it really matter? Either way, the command is clear. Love and serve those who are struggling. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine you're in a crowded room and someone whispers to you, "Hey, that person over there? They're really struggling right now, they just lost their job, their home, and they're feeling completely alone." What would you do? Would you ignore them or step in to help? Now imagine that voice whispering to you every single day. Because let's face it, there are always people in need around us. That's what Jesus is doing here. He's pointing them out and saying, "Hey, I'm with them." But let's challenge this a bit. In a world where we're constantly bombarded by news of suffering, from global crises to local issues, it's easy to feel overwhelmed or desensitized. How do we balance compassion with the limits of our time and energy? It's a valid question, and honestly, I don't think there's a perfect answer. What I do know is this: even small actions matter. You don't have to solve world hunger to make a difference. Maybe it's buying an extra sandwich to give to someone in need. Maybe it's donating to a non-profit, or simply sitting down to listen to someone's story. The point is to do times something asterisk. Because every act of love, no matter how small, ripples outward in ways we can't even imagine. Alright, so how do we actually live out this Matthew 25 challenge in our everyday lives? I mean, most of us aren't going to stumble across a hungry stranger or a person in prison every day, right? So, what does this look like in a modern context? Here's a thought. Start by noticing. Seriously, just notice. Who in your life might be struggling? It could be the co-worker who's been unusually quiet, the neighbor who seems isolated, or even the grocery store cashier who's working a double shift. Compassion starts when we stop rushing long enough to actually see the people around us. Let me tell you about a friend of mine. She makes these blessing bags little kits with snacks, toiletries, and encouraging notes, so she's always ready to help someone she meets on the street. It's such a simple idea, but it's incredibly impactful. It's a tangible way to live out Matthew 25, even in a busy urban life. Of course, there's always this tension. How much is enough? How do we balance generosity with our own needs and responsibilities? And you know what? I think that's the wrong question. Instead of asking, what's enough? Maybe we should ask, what's next? What's the next small step you can take to live more like Jesus?